Ennio Morricone was an Italian composer primarily of film scores. He is one of the most prolific film scorers ever, with over 400 and also over 100 non-film compositions. He's won many awards and accolades. He's best known possibly for his work on spaghetti westerns, particularly for working with Sergio Leone on the Dollars trilogy. His professional work started when he left school in 1954, I believe, and he continued to work until about 2015. So there's about 60 years worth of work. He has worked in many settings as well as film, including with an avant garde improv group known as The Group, writing and arranging for pop artists and music for commercials. And he has sold well over 70 million records worldwide. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of the soundtrack album Il Buono, Il Brutto, Il Cattivo, otherwise known as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which was an album released in 1966 and was the soundtrack album for that spaghetti western film starring Clint Eastwood, which was the third in the Dollars trilogy. So it was for a fistful of dollars, for a few dollars more, if I'm getting this right, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I don't think I've seen the film. If I have, it's a very long time ago. And I think it's my first time hearing this soundtrack. But the very first few notes, the 8 notes that it starts with, are very, very well known. It starts with "do you bong bong bong," which is hard to escape in popular culture. It's that's the only bit that I knew of it. It's got a curious feel. So it's orchestral, but apparently it's stripped back. Certainly at certain points, I can tell that. And instead of having a full orchestra, it uses other things like a classical guitar and an electric guitar, a harmonica, voice, mariachi-like trumpet, yodeling and whistling at points, and kind of read between the lines that this collaboration between Ennio Morricone and Sergio Leone set the tropes for Western music by doing this kind of stripped back feel, but also using these alternative, almost kind of toy sounds. Oh, yeah, I haven't mentioned though. Is the very first few notes with the doo wee are done on a kind of ocarina. Um, so sometimes it's big and lush, and sometimes it's kind of stripped back and haunting, and it tends to take its time. So apparently, excuse me, some of the tracks were written before filming, and then with the direction and the editing in the film, it was done to make the film fit the music, possibly not for all the tracks. And that because Sergio Leone liked the music so much, he didn't want to cut it. So this makes some of the music quite expansive. It gives the music a better art than some film music. Because film music that's been written to go in time with the action can be a bit kind of changey in feel. Now, apparently, this habit meant that the films had a kind of slower feel to them than some films. It tended to use long shots and close shots and just kind of take his time in the direction of the film, which is what the music does as well. As an album, it also has a reasonable arc, which is somewhat unusual for soundtracks. It is a bit kind of soundtracky. It still feels like it's somewhat lacking in coherence, particularly apart from some recurring themes. And partly that's because there's quite a large variety of feel, and it lacks context, or it lacks the context of the film that it was written for. So I often think that soundtracks are a bit of a difficult thing to come to cold if you haven't seen the film or the show that they're from. I think they work best, or in my mind, generally as a souvenir. So having seen the film or the show is a reminder, something you can take away, something you can resample, um, and to kind of relive at least a little bit of that experience. It's not 100% true. I've come across soundtrack albums that don't feel like that, and there are some notable exceptions, like the Hamilton soundtrack, where that made me go and see the show, and it was great. Excuse me again. Um, anyway, that complaint that I have about soundtrack albums, I think it's less true for this album than for some. And I think generally it's less true if you're a proper soundtrack fan. This is probably a really good album for you. For me, it was okay, and I kind of sort of enjoyed it, but sort of but mostly wasn't that bothered. Apart from the iconic track, which yeah, I enjoyed that, and I think that was because of the recognition of it. So that's what I think of this album. As always, I'd love to know what you think, so please do share that with me by leaving me a comment. And that's it from me for now.